UFC 279, Draftkings has released the salary so we could take our first look. You can call me Kunith. Let's make some money this week. Apologies for my absence last week. If you did poorly because you watched some other channels, I'm sorry. I didn't want to miss last week, but Oscar kept bugging me, asking me to teach him up-close magic. This is about as far as we got with everything. Show him the card. Not that hard. No, dude, we still don't get this all week. Why did I miss last week if you're still not getting this? You slide. That's it. That's it. You slide, you see. But anyway, we are back. We did post on Twitter last week some quick thoughts, and they ended up doing pretty well in terms of the stuff that we posted, like staying away from the main and co-main, Stephanie Egger being a slate-breaking kind of play, and more. And if you want to check my work on that, go to Kunith MMA, and you'll be able to see exactly what I'm talking about. But we're back this week, UFC 279, and we will start right at the top of the slate, as we always do. Here's our main event favorite, Khamzat Chimaev. He's going to be fighting Nate Diaz this week. Trigger warning incoming for Nate Diaz fans. I'll give you a few seconds to collect your thoughts. This matchmaking is an absolute joke. I don't understand why this fight is being made. These two are on completely different planets in terms of skill right now, and I think this is going to be a really, really bad week for Nate Diaz. Chimaev is going to be able to do whatever he wants to him. He's going to be able to beat Nate up on the feet. He's going to be able to take him down at will, and I know that Nate is as durable as they come, but I see him getting finished this week inside the first round. And you don't need me to tell you that Chimaev is going to win. You already know that. You just want to know if he's too expensive on DraftKings sitting at 9,600.
Good news, everyone!
I can confidently say that he's not. He's currently averaging almost 120 DraftKings points. Nate Diaz is a crash test dummy at this point in his career, so the wolf is going to eat, brother. And you're going to need Chimaev in your lineups, both in cash games and in your tournaments. Chimaev inside the distance is probably the best way to approach this fight from a straight betting perspective. And if you want to make real money on this fight, real plus money, juicy plus money, I would say that Chimaev inside the first round is what you should lay down. And it's not because he's going to knock Nate Diaz out necessarily, but I think that if he's going to get into a dominant position, Nate Diaz can't get up. There are 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 unanswered strikes, then the ref is going to stop in. The pick for me is Khamzat Chimaev in the first round. Next at 9,200 is Norma Dumont. She's fighting Danyelle Wolf this week. If you don't know who Danyelle Wolf is, you're probably looking at her record and thinking, what is a 39-year-old with one professional MMA fight doing in the UFC? I don't really know, to be honest with you. She does have a rich boxing background, as I'm sure most of you know. 44 fights, 30 wins out of those 44, no knockouts. But she's taller, she's longer, so on the feet you're going to see her have a striking advantage, and that is her path to victory here over Norma Dumont, of course. The issue, though, is that she's going to get completely dominated once this fight hits the clinch and once this fight hits the mat, and Norma Dumont, who is historically low output and a poor performer when it comes to DraftKings scoring, she probably picks up a submission win here and shows up in the optimal lineup just like Stephanie Egger did last week. And again, I posted those quick thoughts on Twitter. You can follow me right there at Kunith MMA. If you don't follow me on Twitter, I'll Stockton slap your grandfather. Now, when we build lineups later in the week, yes, it's going to be tough for us to get to Dumont and Chimaev in the same lineup with the way that the pricing is on this slate, but if we can pull it off, you're going to have a situation where you have the safety and upside of Chimaev and the leverage of Dumont, putting you in a great spot if both of them win. Norma Dumont really let us down in her last fight against Macy, but she did start fighting a lot better when it came to the third round. I think she'll look back on the tape of that performance, want to come back much stronger this week, and not be so hesitant in her approach. And it's only 3 rounds. She's not going to gas out in 3 rounds if she pushes a pace. The pick for me is going to be Norm, and it's going to be by submission. Next at 9,100, we have Jake Collier, the prototype. I'm assuming the prototype is some Mountain Dew flavor I don't know about yet. He's fighting Chris Barnett this week. At UFC 278, there was a lot made of the fight with Luke Rockhold and Paulo Costa being the most handsome matchup of all time, but that'll all change this week with this fight between Collier and Beast Boy Barnett. Now, what I like about Jake is I like the output, I like the chin, I like the surprising cardio, and the willingness to grapple that he's shown lately. Now, he probably doesn't look to grapple much in this fight because Chris Barnett is built like a soup dumpling, But that is going to be an option for him, just like it was in the Arlovsky fight, in a fight that looked like he won. The judges saw it a different way. I don't know about all that. But in this fight, I expect Collier to be a step ahead of Barnett this week. I think that he's going to piece him up. I think Barnett eats a lot of shots this week. And you know that Beast Boy is going to throw big winging hooks, big powerful hooks back his way, but I don't see him offering a whole lot outside of that, nothing too dangerous. I think we see Jake Collier glide to an easy decision win here. He probably scores around 75 DraftKings points. I don't think that he pulls a ton of ownership this week, but I don't see his ceiling being all that high. And because his ceiling's not all that high, and given that it's heavyweight MMA and the better athlete is actually on the other side of this matchup, if you were to attack this fight, I would recommend that you roster Chris Barnett, but I'm going to be staying away from this either way. But the official pick for me as of right now, early in the week, is going to be Jake Collier, and it's going to be by decision. Next at 9,000 is a friend of the show. It's Jingliang the Leech. He came through for us last time in a big way and quieted a lot of the doubt that was out there. I know some of y'all were in the comments with conviction talking about how bad the Leech is, but he ultimately showed off that power that he's known for, picking up another knockout in the UFC. Now he's fighting Tony Ferguson this week. Blades and shades. Tony Ferguson moving up to welterweight, which is super interesting. 170-pound El Cucuy could end up being a mythical fighter after Saturday night. And you can make a case for either side of this matchup. Jingliang is steady, he throws bombs, he's got a good chin, he's a tough matchup all around for almost anyone in the division. And on the other side, Tony Ferguson is the type of guy to sit on the TV and watch the couch. He's also the type of guy to Imanari roll out of nowhere, stuff a takedown and cinch up a Darce. There are paths to victory for each of these men this week. Now for Ferguson, I think that standing with the Leech is a bad idea, especially coming off that bad knockout to Michael Chandler earlier in the year. I think on the feet the Leech is a problem, but I think on the mat Tony Ferguson could find a submission quickly. And it's not necessarily a striker versus grappler matchup really, but I can see the Leech shooting for takedowns like he often does, Tony Ferguson accepting bottom, throwing up submission attempts, and that's where I think the fight ends. So I like Tony Ferguson this week. I think he has more ways to win. I think the Darce Knight rises again, and I think the heart of the MMA community is going to cry tears of joy for the legend this week. The pick for me in this fight is Tony Ferguson by submission. And if you haven't already, like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment something for the algorithm. I'm going to put a pinned comment down there that I want your input on. I'm excited to see what you guys say. But back to the action, right at 8,900, we have Hakeem Dawodu. He's fighting Julian Erosa this week. Mean Hakeem throws a lot of strikes. He has some power, and by power I mean the power that you would have if you were in incredible shape throwing punches with 4-ounce gloves. Some people talk about Hakeem Dawodu like he's featherweight Rumble Johnson, and that's not the case. He's not putting people out left and right, but that is totally on the table this week because on the other side of this matchup you have Julian Erosa, who's a banger that doesn't have a great chin. That's like wanting to play center in basketball but you're the size of Henry Cejudo. Now for Julian Erosa, some of his knockout losses aren't because he has a bad chin, it's more so breakdowns in his striking defense that lead to perfect technique landing or technique landing perfectly. And a great example of that is when he fought Julio Arce. He's got Julio Arce backing up against the fence, he drops his hands and gets head kicked. Boom. And if he isn't careful this week, he's going to get knocked out because Dawodu is going to fight with pressure, with volume, and all it takes is one perfectly placed strike to turn the lights out. Oscar, I like the effort, but now they can't see me. I don't see how Mean Hakeem loses this fight. His run in the UFC has been impressive so far, and I expect us to see him win again this week. I do think that a knockout's on the table, but the most likely outcome here is Mean Hakeem by decision. And with that decision win, he does not break 100 DraftKings points, so he's not somebody that I'm dying to put in my lineup, but I do think that Hakeem Dawodu by decision is the way to go. Next at 8,800, we have Irene Aldana. She's going to be fighting Macy this week. Irene Aldana presents a lot of things that you like on the feet. Output, decent power, really good footwork. And she's going to need that footwork this week because if she avoids the clinch successfully, she should piece Chasson up. And I wasn't impressed with Macy Chasson last time out because she looked awful in the last round. On the feet, she left a lot to be desired, and despite all her takedowns and control time, she didn't do much in those positions, and she ultimately won the fight but nearly lost based on the judges' scorecards because she didn't do a whole lot. But that was against Norma Dumont, who on that night looked like she was completely stuck in neutral neutral, and who is somebody who fights more not to lose rather than to win definitively. That's not the case at all with Irene Aldana. She fights hard, she looks for finishes, and she throws a lot more than somebody like Chasson. And being that it's women's MMA and Chasson is coming off a grappling heavy win, you can expect the ownership for Aldana to be very, very low while the upside is surprisingly high. I mean, this woman knocked out Ketlin Vieira not too long ago, so you got to put some respect on her name. And I'm going to do just that. The pick for me in this fight is Irene Aldana by knockout, and again, very low ownership. Sneaky, sneaky stuff. Next at 8,700, we have Kevin Holland. He's going to be fighting crime this week, and he's going to squeeze in a fight with Daniel Rodriguez as well. Kevin Holland is awesome at welterweight. He's a serious problem, I believe, for anybody in the division with that length, that speed, that power. He looks like he's incredibly difficult to game plan for. His grappling has been a work in progress since he's come into the UFC, but he's being out-grappled by high-level guys at 185 like Derek Brunson or Marvin Vettori on short notice. But he's largely not getting dominated on the ground in most of his fights. He's not a fish out of water down there by any stretch. So I'm not worried about it if this fight does hit the mat. And on the feet, he's going to have a few inches in height over D-Rod, but he also has 7 inches in reach over Daniel Rodriguez. And I know people don't like to make a big deal out of the reach advantages, but when it's over 4 or 5 inches, that's substantial. Now on the other side, you have Daniel Rodriguez, who has all the dogs in him, like an entire kennel of dogs in him. And he's proven that in the UFC, where he's taken big shots, he's taken damage, and he's just giving it right back, and he really takes over when things are going his way. With Daniel Rodriguez, when it rains, it pours. Once he gets into a rhythm and finds his range, which is normally pretty early in his fights, he pounds on guys, letting his hands go, and he's a hard guy to deal with once he's getting in that state. So I like D-Rod as a fighter, and I think that he's a tough fight for most people in this weight class, but the pick has to be Kevin Holland. When you take into account the size, the experience, level of competition, age, physical shape that Kevin Holland's come into in these last few fights, and considering that at 170 pounds, this guy's a finishing machine, I like Kevin Holland not only to win this fight, but I think that he finds the finish inside the distance. I'm thinking second round knockout this week. On DraftKings, Kevin Holland will always be a popular play, whether he's the underdog, whether he's the favorite, whether he's highly priced, whether he's on the prelims or the main card. So you're going to see a lot of people get here. And in his last time out, if you didn't roster him against Tim Means, then you did a good thing because he didn't really pay off his salary at 88 points at 8,900. But before that, he put up 101 when he was 9,100. So you're really going to have to look at this and decide if you want to go this route. But again, you're going to see a lot of people getting here as well. And we'll talk more about that when we do our final picks video later in the week. But I like Kevin Holland to win that fight. Next at 8,600, a guy who for sure ate glue when he was a kid, Yohan Cutelaba, is fighting Johnny Walker this week. The under for this fight is a lock. I don't see this fight going the distance. Both of these guys have power. They have poor defense, and that's all you really need to make a fun fight. What I like about Cutelaba is the power, the aggression, the grappling, and how bad Walker is defensively. What I like about Walker is the 5-inch height advantage, the 7-inch reach advantage like we just talked about, but also the athleticism. The issue with Walker is how he's fought lately. He's been tentative, he makes questionable decisions. So if the current version of Johnny Walker that we've been seeing tries to fight Yohan Cutelaba this week, he's going to get the doors blown off him, I'm sure of that. If we see Johnny Walker get closer to what he was when he first came into the UFC, fighting with more recklessness, throwing crazy techniques, spinning elbows, spinning back fists, flying knee, that's the kind of stuff that's impossible to game for, especially at his size and his speed, and I think that that would result in a first round knockout. And on both sides, I mean, you just can't trust either of these guys. You have Yohan Cutelaba, who on paper looks like he has all the skills in the world to be a destroyer, yet he's 5-6-1 in the UFC. And the same logic applies with Johnny Walker, who's 4-4 in the UFC. So you got two guys that are extremely hard to trust, and that makes this a tough call. And since it's so tough, since it's a toss-up, I do think that you have to go with the underdog in this spot. The size, the unorthodox techniques, the athleticism, they're all keeping me on the side of Johnny Walker. He's not a lock by any means. Again, a difficult guy to trust, but for DraftKings, I don't see this fight going the distance, and you're probably going to need one side of it. I prefer the underdog. And when we build lineups later in the week, we'll build some lineups with Cutelaba. We'll build some lineups with Johnny Walker, but for the prediction's sake, the pick for me in this fight is Johnny Walker by knockout. Next at 8,500, we have Melissa Martinez. She's going to be fighting Elise Reed this week. Elise Reed's a bum. There, I said it. Elise Reed's a bum. She can't grapple. She doesn't throw with much power. Elise Reed's dead to me. Now, granted, Melissa Martinez isn't going to come out here on her Khabib. She's not going to try to take her down. She's not going to wrestle. She's going to keep this fight on the feet, but I do think she's the more dangerous of the two. Elise Reed doesn't move her head well. She's going to have to deal with that southpaw stance on the other side, and I just don't see her doing enough to win or having enough big moments to win any fights in the UFC, despite this being Martinez making her UFC debut. I think the win for Elise Reed over Corey McKenna was a complete aberration. I think that she caught lightning in a bottle, and that won't happen again. From a DraftKings perspective, both sides of this fight are going to go way under-owned, but I don't see myself getting to either side. I think it's going to go under-owned for good reason. I don't expect a finish. I expect very little grappling and a poor score at the end of it for the person who wins this fight, so I'm going to be staying away from this one, but the pick for me is Melissa Martinez by decision. Next at 8,400, we have Alatengheili. He's going to be fighting Chad Anheliger this week. I almost feel like the salary should be flipped here. Alatengheili is coming off a quick knockout of Kevin Croom, so the recency bias might be at play here. But you have to remember that Kevin Croom was not great to begin with, and he was 35 years old, cutting down to bantamweight at nearly 6 feet tall. Frankly, I think anybody in the weight class was going to put Kevin Croom out that night, and Alatengheili just ended up throwing a bomb and landing really early. And he does throw big shots, and he does have decent wrestling, and he is fighting out of a great camp. My issue with him, though, in this fight is his head movement, or lack thereof, because Chad Anheliger is a sniper, and he could end up sparking Alatengheili really at any point in this fight, but I don't see Anheliger winning minutes in this fight. We saw him taken down several times on the Contender Series, then again against Jesse Schrader, who is not UFC caliber, and now he has to keep the feet against the guy whose first choice is to shoot for takedowns. Those level changes as well could open up that big overhand that we know he has in his arsenal. So I'm a little torn. I do think that the popular pick here is going to be Chad Anheliger, but Alatengheili could put together a solid performance this week, and if he sticks to a good game plan, he could score a lot of points on DraftKings as well. So I like him to win this fight by decision, and for DraftKings, he is sneaky sitting here at 8,400. He's going to help you do a lot of things with your lineups with the way that the pricing shakes out, and if he gets 1 to 2 takedowns each round, he could crack 90 points this week. So the pick for me is Alatengheili, and it's going to be by decision. Next at 8,300, we have Jamie Pickett, the Night Wolf. He's going to be fighting Denis Tiuliulin, who just fought the Black Wolf. Now he has to fight the black guy, who's the Night Wolf. This is a lot of wolf action for Denis Tiuliulin, but I'm going to be honest with you, Jamie Pickett's not that good. I don't think Jamie Pickett, outside of maybe his family, is anybody's favorite fighter, anyone. And it's because he's not all that dangerous, he's a bit of a generalist, and he isn't that impressive. He doesn't fight with a whole lot of ferocity. In the UFC, he beat Pepe Staropoli, who really struggled at the UFC level, and then he follows that up with an upset win over Ugly Joe Holmes when Joe Holmes was making his debut and gassed out. If you look right there on the screen, you're going to see the highest number of strikes that he's thrown in a UFC fight sits at 58 strikes. It's horrible. And on the other side, you have Denis Tiuliulin, who made his UFC debut against Aliaskhab Khizriev, where he actually survived a round and then some and landed 43 strikes in just over 2 rounds. And against Khizriev, he was a huge underdog. That outcome didn't really surprise anyone. But in this fight, I see him having the advantage in power, I see him having the advantage in volume, and as long as he can keep his feet, not allow himself to be taken down, I see him picking up a finish and being a sneaky DraftKings play at 7,900. Pickett is someone you never want in your lineup, ever. If you look at his 5 UFC fights, 22 points, 2 points, 66 points, 66 points, and 2 points. So on his best day, he's still not good. He's still not even breaking 70 points. Half of that 66 points comes from winning the fight. That's crazy. So if you need to save some salary on a card where there aren't a whole lot of underdogs that you can confidently choose from, I think Denis Tiuliulin might be your guy. He seems like my guy right now, and the pick for me in this fight is Denis Tiuliulin by knockout. And the final scrap that we'll take a look at takes place between Darien Weeks and Yohan Lainess. I think Yohan Lainess wins this fight, and the reason why I think that is because he's got the power advantage, and Darien Weeks' low output. That fight that we saw with him and Ian Gary was terrible. It was a terrible fight. Both guys looked gun shy. You throw 125 strikes with Bryan Barberena. That's just going to happen. And it's going to happen because Bryan Barberena is going to hit you once, he's going to hit you twice, he's going to hit you 3 times, and you're going to realize, okay, that's not the hardest I've ever been punched. Bryan Barberena will get into these brawls with people. He landed a lot of hard, nice, clean strikes on Robbie Lawler to put him out, but Robbie Lawler is old at this point. Somebody young, athletic, in great shape like Darien Weeks, they're going to be able to take those shots. Now, Yohan Lainess, he's coming with a different type of gravy, you get me. He's going to be hitting Darien Weeks with those hands of stone, and he's going to be working the body, which is super underutilized in MMA. Let me just talk about this for a second. The amount of times that I'm watching a UFC fight or an MMA fight in general, and I see one fighter getting pushed up against the fence, and they're in this position, covering up, taking the hooks, blocking the straight punches, whatever, and they're leaning back, like extending their midsection, their body's wide open, and you see these guys just continue to headhunt. It's so frustrating because you can't out-tough body shots, right? Like, you can condition your body to take shots, but after a while, if you get hit the right way or if you get hit too many times in the body, you just shut down. It's not a choice anymore. I think 5 years from now, as the game of MMA starts to evolve, you're going to see way more body work. We've seen in the last couple of years a lot of things change when it comes to MMA, like, for example, the low kick moving from the thigh to the calf. Another thing that you're seeing is that people are just becoming better grapplers, and a lot of times, like, you see guys get caught in like a triangle choke, for example, like who got caught with Bill Algeo got caught with a triangle choke from Herbert Burns. He just sat there and was able to get out of it. Same thing with the French kid last week who was making his UFC debut. That was a tight triangle. He ultimately was able to get out of it at the end of the fight. Even Yanan Wu, now that I'm thinking about it, was able to get out of a triangle from Mayra Bueno Silva earlier this year. A lot of the times when you're seeing people get submitted, it's because of a rear naked choke, because it's not something that's easy to fight off of or get out of once it's cinched up. It's almost impossible. But that's evolution of the game, right? You're looking at a situation where guys used to get caught with more stuff on the ground. It's not going to happen as much. And that brings me to this. I say all that to say this. 3, 4, 5 years from now, body work, the rate of it is going to go through the roof when it comes to MMA. Sorry for ranting. But in this fight, again, I like Yohan Lainess to win. I wouldn't be surprised if Darien Weeks was able to make this a slower, kind of boring contest the way that he did with Ian Gary. But he was also pressuring Ian Gary. Ian Gary was doing a lot of backing up. I think if he tries to do that with Yohan Lainess, he's going to get floored at some point. So give me the Canadian in this fight. I think Yohan Lainess by decision makes the most sense. And I'll quickly run through the plays for you again at 8,000 and below. Before I do, if you haven't already, like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment for the algorithm, follow me on Twitter. Now that we got all that out the way, we can do a quick little review. Again, Yohan Lainess, I like him this week. I like the power. I like the output. I like the pressure. I think that he does good work. And I mean, he was kicking Gabe Green's ass before he gassed out. It wasn't like Gabe Green was killing him by any stretch. He gassed out and Gabe Green was able to take advantage. A similar situation with Denis Tiuliulin. This is more of me not playing Jamie Pickett than it is playing Denis Tiuliulin. I think that if Jamie Pickett is on any card, it makes sense to take the other side. Chad Anheliger, again, I think he's going to be chalk. I think a lot of people are going to want to get here this week, and I don't expect him to be able to stop the takedowns. He has the power. He has the precision. He doesn't have a lot of miles on him. He's 35, I believe, but it's not like he's fought all that much. So there are reasons to like Chad Anheliger, and that knee-jerk first reaction, I thought, oh, he'll probably win that fight, but upon closer review, I do think that Alatengheili probably wins. Elise Reed, don't waste my time. Don't even waste my time. Johnny Walker, I mean, you can see him put up 1 point against the likes of Corey Anderson, which I called that day. Ryan, if you're watching, you know I called it. I was long before the channel. But now you've got Misha Serkinov, right? Justin Ledet, Khalil Roundtree, Ryan Spann. These kinds of performances are what we would need from him this week, and I think he can come up with one. D-Rod. So D-Rod could turn the slate on its head with a knockout win here because, again, everybody and their mother is going to be on Kevin Holland this week. D-Rod is a tough dude. He throws hammers. Kevin Holland is hittable, but I do think that Kevin Holland is just going to be too much, and I ultimately think that he finishes Daniel Rodriguez this week. Macy Chasson, I think that she gets pieced up on the feet. I don't think that she's going to be able to do very much. She doesn't really land very hard. Julian Erosa, I don't see how he beats Hakeem Dawodu this week. He would have to catch him with something on the ground, like a darce or something like that, but I don't see him catching Hakeem Dawodu with anything like that. TF, Technical Fault, Tony Ferguson, Blades and Shades, CSO, Snap Jitsu, jumpsuit, my mat, whatever you want to call him. I think we see the resurgence. Tony Ferguson at 170 pounds is going to be a problem, mark my words. Beast Boy Barnett, again, I don't like him to win this fight, but if you do attack this fight, I would recommend that you play this side. I don't think that Jake Collier has it in his locker to take this guy out, and I think that he's a much better athlete here. If he comes in better shape than he has recently, you might want to have some exposure to this guy in your lineups. Danyelle Wolf, just far too limited to want to back with any kind of confidence, making your UFC debut at 39 years old against somebody who's ranked. That's just bad biscuits. Nate Diaz, 15-11 in the UFC. This was one of the coolest days ever, though. I told somebody who was a friend of a friend to put money on Nate Diaz this week. He was a pretty happy guy. But I mean, there's just no path to victory for him at all. I've seen people say, well, what if Khamzat Chimaev gasses out or something? Come on. But if you've made it to this point in the video, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you later in the week.